www.gosarforcongress.com or at our gosar.house.gov. We'd love to have the dialogue because it's the answers to our problems exist in Main Street America with common sense and real people living and breathing and having skin in the game and putting those together. So America needs you. Shine brightly.
Well, excellent. It was wonderful to speak with you today, and keep up the fine work there in Arizona.
Thank you so very, very, very much. And John and Brett, thank you again for keeping this in the focus for all of us to correspond to.
Great. Take care.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Bye-bye.
You know, Brett, there's so much to be said for this freshman congressional class. You know, they've been extremely impressive, and what I like is they're not afraid to take on both sides, including their own leadership.
And John, we've had a very nice listener who's been holding for so long, and I want to bring him into the conversation now. Gary, I want to welcome you to the Final Say Radio Show. Thank you so much for holding through that. We got a little backed up, and sorry you had to wait so long.
Brett, not at all. Not at all. I
hope you enjoyed that, by the way.
Pardon me?
I hope you enjoyed that, by the way.
That's what I was getting around to. I really did. And, my God, I wish I could have gotten included in that because, oh, gosh, Brett, if you know anything about me, you know I ran for Congress this year, got bumped off in an unfair primary in June, and I was the Democrat running against my congressman in 2010 when they didn't put up anybody. I snuck in. And I don't know if you know this about me. I voted for the congressman 6 times because I was a Republican for 30 years. Who better to argue economic policy with a Republican than this Democrat who was a former Republican? But I mean, you're talking tax policy, and I got a bloody tax plan out there, or I did. I did discuss it with 1 or 2 reporters who were intrigued on the phone, but then when they write an article about you, they give you one line, and your competitors, your challengers, they get a line, and it's just a short article in the newspaper. And here's an opportunity to talk to an accountant, I guess, Brett or John, and an entrepreneur, I guess. It's terrific. And I would have loved to talk to you about my congressman and the one issue that I call it his Achilles heel that I think could bring him down. And
who's your congressman?
Frank Lobiando, New Jersey's 2nd Congressional District. He's there 18 years. And all anyone wants to talk about, if they want to criticize it, is that he broke his term limit pledge. That's the least of it. But I'm listening to you guys talk about tax policy. Maybe you'll have me on some other time, and I'll tell you what the congressman did, which is pretty serious stuff. I mean, it's worse than punching your resume and saying, for instance, you went to a college that you didn't go to, or were a veteran and you weren't, or you were an elite veteran and you weren't. This is worse what he did. But have you talked about the tax policy that you were just discussing?
Well, you'll have to fill me in on that. But Gary, so let's start at the top. In your tax policy, number 1, what's the first step you take?
I would eliminate the IRS on the bottom 90%. I mean, it's symbolic.
I love you already.
Thanks. I mean, I was a Republican, and here's a guy that's for universal health care.
One-page form.
It would be not. Well, I don't think it. Not. It would for the top. Okay, but I keep it on the top 10%. And when you say that the top 20% pay what 90%. What is it? What is it? The top 20% pay 90% of the income tax now, probably. I mean, I acknowledge that, and I give them credit. What's that?
I think it's 94%.
Yeah, it's 94%, even more. So, I mean, I would keep it. I stopped at the top 10%. I said, keep the income tax on them. Thank them for paying all this tax. And I said, even raise it slightly on them. A lot of them, are asking to have their taxes increased, like Warren Buffett say. And it's definitely a proven fact that the rich are richer now than they ever have been. But anyway, if we're going to solve this deficit problem, they're pitching in. But I would have a tax on the lower 90% as a national sales tax, and then the poor would be forced into paying tax and contributing. You mentioned skin in the game, and that's what I called it. I mean, you or I didn't make up that term. It's a valid thing. And so if there was a national sales tax, I think there'd be more revenue coming in. But I said if there isn't, then cut back government and make, the debits equal the credits. I said, you got to have this huge compromise now. You got to think outside the box. It's time for something drastic. And I'm out there, but, people will say, oh, that's horrible. You want to have a national sales tax. It's regressive on the poor. No one has a better idea, but they just want to nitpick you on the things that you're already acknowledging. And I'm acknowledging, yes, the poor would pay tax. But then maybe we could have national health insurance, and you could say that they're not relying on Medicaid, that they do have skin in the game, and they're paying for their own health care, something or other.
Sure.
But the big thing is, if it did revive the economy, then there's that other expression. I don't know if it was Milton Friedman or who,
sure,
but
Gary.
a rising tide lifts all boats.
Gary, we're going to take a quick 1 minute break, but hang on, we're going to bring you right back.
Thanks, guys.
You are listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport. To join the conversation, please call 347-945-7895.
So, Gary, coming back to our conversation,
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying now, correct me if I'm wrong, it's sort of a hybrid form of what,
Right.
if you recall, Herman Cain was out there discussing.
Yeah, the 999. Yeah.
999 plan.
But that's
Now, I think
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure. No, it's an interesting thought. I'm personally, I haven't actually made up my mind if I'm for the fair tax or the flat tax, or I'm still out there on what and the reason I say that is because I've been doing some analysis of what, the Congressional Budget Office, what a lot of different economists and things have been saying about these different plans, and I'm still working on it in my mind what I think is the best course. And I also like to consider the moral and ethical issues involved in taxation. And I come back to the idea, if you're going to talk about a national sales tax, I like the idea in that I'm such a free market person that's a good way of doing it, because if you consume, you pay. And unlike the healthcare law, where if you don't have health insurance now, you're going to be taxed for not having something. I think it's almost like the opposite. You're punished. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I say if you're somebody who wants to go out and spend, then you'll pay more of the tax. If you're somebody who actually wants to save and hold on to your money and save for a brighter day or a future day, then you won't be taxed on it.
Yeah, we're just scratching the surface of what I'm proposing, because
Sure.
I'm saying eliminate the income tax on the bottom 90%. They still got to have to pay the Social Security tax. I'm for eliminating all corporate taxes, but I said just have a symbolic 6.5% corporate tax on everybody, and that would equal what a self-employed person would pay in that second half of the self-employment tax. They get taxed twice. But I said don't send that, so corporations will pay 6.5%. An entrepreneur would only pay 6.5%. The corporations will symbolically make up for it. But don't send that money to the Treasury. Send it to the Social Security Administration so that still remains funded. But basically what I'm saying is the corporations would really have 0% tax. I mean, they can afford 6% tax when they know that there would be no corporate tax. They're not paying to the Treasury, they pay it to Social Security, and you're incentivizing people to start their own business. If there's no income tax up to the time you hit the top 10%, once you've paid for all your necessities, anything you then earn, you can put in your pocket or save. And
Sure.
I'm the same thing with dividends and all the rest. Just keep it the way it is for the top 10%. But if you're not in the top 10%, any dividend income you have, you're not going to be taxed on up until the time you hit the top 10%. And that would be incentive for people to buy stock like crazy because they know for sure that it's a great deal because they wouldn't have to pay tax on it up to the time they were a rich person. It makes so much sense.
I do think that it's just, we spend, you have to understand, Gary, if you ever sat around the dinner table at the Rappaport household, if you have 12 people, you have 14 conversations.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. And you know what I also, but guys, this is what's funny about my candidacy. I'm not stupid. I mean, I say all the time, like if I'm on a local radio station, I say this is aspirational. I know Garrrry Stein is not going to go down to Washington and change anyone's mind. But I'm an office cleaner by profession. I'm a janitor. I said, send this guy with a good idea. He's not going to get it past anybody down there because all those congressmen, I mean, they're into people's pocket. I mean, you know, I mean, the one hand washes the other down there. They want to hear my idea. But, I mean, if I went down there and I start talking about this idea, the fact that I got elected, or even nibbled at this winning margin, this lousy congressman of mine is going to win by 65% of the vote. He wins every election by 65% of the vote. That's a story for another day.
Well,
the one he's running against is terrible now. The one that beat me.
Yeah, Gary, sadly we see the Tea Party portrayed poorly in the media all the time, but one of the things that I find is profoundly impactful from the Tea Party and similar grassroots organizations on both sides of the aisle is that it puts in place a set of freshman congressmen who are much more likely to attempt to do the bidding of the people and far less likely to follow the old power mantra which has been so embedded in Congress. Congress is definitively changing for the better. Brett and I see it firsthand. We talk to a lot of these folks eyeball to eyeball and certainly on the radio. Long way to go in the Senate still, but in theory it should take 3 times as long. Hopefully, using new media effectively, we can speed that up. But so I do think change is possible and even inevitable.
They blame the Tea Party. They blame the. Did I lose you guys?
No, we're here. No, I just wanted to say.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I wanted to get your opinion, Gary, because I don't want to bore the audience too much with tax talk because they'll start to drift off. Even though you and I could probably discuss it all day. But one thing that I've had a lot of people sending me questions on is who you think or who we think should be the VP candidate. This decision is probably going to come over the next few weeks. It could come before the GOP convention. It could come at the GOP convention. Who knows? It can come after. Now, there's obvious names such as Marco Rubio or Condoleezza Wright. Some people mentioned, Alan West could be a possibility. What do you think?
I have a pick, and this is why the Democrats here hate me, even though I'm for national health insurance single payer. My pick is Christie. I mean,
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he would overshadow Romney, but does Romney want to lose? I mean, I'd pick Christie and let Christie defend himself. I mean, I want to see Christie debate Joe Biden, and that'd be as opposed to Marco Rubio, who's a little young, maybe. I mean, I heard him on the radio for an hour the other week, and he's terrific. But again, I'm a Democrat. He's terrific, but maybe not enough to really help Romney, unless Romney's cynically doing it for the Hispanic vote.
Now, how does Christie help bring? Well, you just mentioned it. You're looking at gaining a little bit in the black vote. You're looking at picking up more independents, more Hispanic vote, more women. How does Christie accomplish that?
I think he's just so unusual and frank, and the country's starving for outspokenness. And then it'll be trashed mercifully. Oh, I can't even pronounce it. By my side, and you know what? He'll answer them back, and then all the independents will get on his side because he's reasonable. I went to one of his town hall meetings a year ago, I think it was. I was just, my jaw dropped how good he was. Now, I don't care if I'm a Democrat or Republican. I mean, we want solutions, right? And I'm sorry, but Romney's just so bland. I don't think he has to be, but there's just something about him where he can't just tell it like it is. He's always holding back. But the party a big favor by showcasing Christie, because there isn't another election in 4 years. So I think it's a smart pick. I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
I don't want to imagine not winning, Romney not winning, because I don't know that we have another election in 2016.
But maybe that's the way to win this year. Maybe. It's already discounted, Rubio, but nobody's figuring Christie. So
sure.
I think the risk with Christie is he had some charisma to the ticket, but I think there's definitely some downside. I think he's much easier to make to turn into a caricature, and of course you have to worry about that in the mainstream media, because they'll throw a lot of that at him. I think in some cases, though, somebody like Romney can play to a benefit what you might look at as a lack of charisma. One of the things that a seasoned CEO, with rare exception, most CEOs are not necessarily outwardly the most charismatic people when they're in their CEO role. Personally, there may be a different story. And the challenge is they're constantly speaking, kind of like a principal at a high school, right? They're used to living in a glass house where everybody knows them, but they don't necessarily know everybody. And what I find is his personality is just that of somebody who is very measured and very careful and very very thoughtful about what he's saying. But I do think having a more charismatic running mate could be good. I personally would love to see him find somebody who has a tremendous amount of business experience, maybe some better foreign policy experience. I certainly would love to see him find a qualified woman. I think that'd be a very strong play as well.
I agree with that. About what you said just previously, I go along with all that, but he's got the problem of his record and flip-flopping on Romney care. I think that's, and I hold that against him, because another candidate a few years ago stuck to his guns, who I thought would have made a great president. And again, I'm showing my conservative roots here. I love Rudolph Giuliani, but he wasn't able to play this game Christie did and flip-flop on the issues. So I think it's ultimately going to hurt him. And maybe Christie can explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Giuliani too. We were talking in the last segment with the congressman about New York, New Jersey briefly. Having worked in that area extensively and having seen what New York had become under Koch, who personally I think is a wonderful man, and Dinkins, who I think is generally a troublemaker and a rebel, and inept. But that city had become a cesspool. I literally moved because of it. The entire city smelled like urine. It was disgusting. It was despicable. I couldn't stomach traveling there, and I did that 5 days a week.
Yep.
And within a couple of years, Giuliani showed that you can make a difference. Now, he got called a Nazi and everything under the sun because of it, but he held to his conviction, and he proved to be a great leader. Unfortunately, when he ran for the big chair, he just somehow he lost himself. It was almost like McCain at the end, where it was like he was thrown in the towel. I felt that race was Giuliani's to win. He was America's mayor, and I think he threw it away. I thought he fought a lousy game. It was his play was far beneath him, and I think it's a shame. I think the country would be far better off if we had his leadership in the last 4 years. The last 12 years.
Yeah, I want to add something to this, and I agree with you. I like Giuliani. I mean, I don't think he was the my perfect candidate. But the fact is that Giuliani didn't, even though he was well known in New York, he didn't have the organization to both fundraise and run a national campaign of that size, and that really it kind of hurt him. Plus, I believe he had a little bit of indecision at the beginning on several things, which kind of put him behind, and he wasn't able to recover.
Yeah, one of the things he knew he was stacked against him, because he knew he couldn't compete in Iowa. And I guess maybe it was New Hampshire. He wanted to hold off till Florida, and that killed him. But one of the things he said that had me, and I always liked him, but I was really in his pocket when one of the things he said during that campaign was he would, for every 3 government employees retiring, we'd only hire 2 new ones. I mean, that was brilliant. It's so simple and brilliant. And
I had forgotten about that. It is. Those are the type of simple common sense measures that make a difference. I mean, sometimes you just have to step in, swing in the bat like he did in New York City, or what we just witnessed in the last 2 years in Wisconsin. But in other cases, you need to take a more subtle approach, like with the government employees, and I thought that made perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, let me add to his comment of going 3 for 2. Just as a basic solution to any level of government, if you apply that kind of an idea, where we're going to start downsizing the size and scope and spending of government through attrition, not replacing all these people. And as we're doing that, by the way, we're going to, new hires that come in are going to come into a system where gradually they're going to start off with paying an X percentage of their benefits, and then receiving or having to, instead of retiring after 20 or 25 years in a lot of cases, they're going to have to work a little bit longer for their package, and that percentage is going to increase slightly over time, so it's not felt too greatly. And at some point, we will have made drastic cuts, but also put the government employee on the same level as the people who are actually paying their salaries. And I think that's important too.
Yeah, and there's no one better than explaining some of this stuff than Christie. I mean,
I'm getting the feeling you like Christie.
But I don't like my congressman who's a Republican. I mean, that should tell the people down here something. There was a state senator, an assemblyman down here who gave up his position. He was a Republican. I mean, he could have had that job for life as an assemblyman, New Jersey State Assemblyman. And he risked it all to run against the state senator, who's a Democrat. And I was running as a Democrat trying to get in as an assemblyman myself last year. I would have, I never, again, didn't make it past the primary. But I supported that guy. His name was Polistina. And I loved the assemblyman that his colleague, there's two in every district, 2 assemblymen, John Amodeo. People, and I like Christie. I wish people would take notice down here when I'm targeting the one politician I don't like, who's actually the head politician down here, Frank Lobianto. He's horrible. And that's the guy I ran against in 2010. It was when I had my eyes open in 2008 when I was an independent candidate, registered Republican, and I saw him up close for the first time. Again, people they should listen to me. I voted for this guy 6 times. Now I'm seeing him up close, investigating his record, and I followed politics since I'm 12 years old, and I didn't really know his record because most people don't know their congressman's record. It's senator and president, right?
Wait a second. Most people don't even know their congressman.
I was being kind. Yeah, that's right. So I mean, here you have an average guy, an average Joe. I mean, I was doing this in 2008 before Joe the plumber. I mean, I had to sit there in 2008 and see this guy come along, Joe the plumber, and get all this publicity when I'm a janitor. Basically, we have our own business, but I do the cleaning myself. We clean offices. And I'm pointing out that this congressman is not what you think he is. I've seen him up close at 3 debates. I sat next to him 2 times and saw him be a real weasel in the 3rd debate where I wasn't invited. And that's from that debate, that one debate where I wasn't invited, but I sat in the audience. That's what really opened my eyes to this guy, the stunt he pulled that day, and reveals this guy to be a snake and sneaky and just beneath contempt. And that had to do with the Iraq troop surge. The most important thing that he went on record in his 18 years he lies and denies. This is a Republican. He was against the troop surge in 2007, meaning he lined up on the side of the Democrats. He won't admit it because he had to go to a funeral for his wife's father. But at that 2010 debate, when the 2008 debate, I was his opponent in 2010. At the 2008 debate when the Democrat opponent asked him why he missed the vote, he was right back in the guy's face and he said, I don't know if you know this, but I had to attend my wife's father's funeral, and that's why I missed the vote. And if that's not good enough for you, I'm sorry I don't meet your standards. And he said, but then he also said he gave a speech on the well of the House. And then I found his speech, and he was against the war. So in other words, he was on the same side of the equation as the Democrat that he was debating, and that Democrat had no idea.
Yeah, we've had a few of those. But Garrrry, I want to thank you
Sure.
so much for joining us today. Please, yeah, sure.
Is this thing ever repeated online so that maybe I can make a little clip of it and throw it out to the people?
All of our shows are posted on our website, thefinalsay.com. You can go there and catch any of the episodes, and we put a lot of the segments and shows up on YouTube as well. And again, you feel free to call in, and
I will.
Also, I'll find you. We can send it to you also.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay.
Appreciate it. You guys are good.
Take care.
You guys are great.
Enjoyed speaking with you today. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care. So, John, I want to come back to our discussion here on the VP candidates. And the biggest problem I have with Chris Christie is the fact that you'd have two people from the Northeast, and I don't think that plays well into the actual playing smart politics of it. And I think also that we need to have somebody who's going to bring us one of these very important swing states. Now, you could look at Ohio with Rob